As I mentioned in my abstract, in the first half of the 17th century, Polish-Ottoman relations were a pressing political issue in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The defeat at Cezora, 1620, the siege of Chocim, 1621, and later King Władysław IV Vasa's clandestine plans to wage war against the Ottoman Empire in the mid-1640s were recurring subjects of parliamentary debate. These developments also generated extensive commentary in both anti- and pro-war pamphlets and historical works. In this paper, I aim to examine literary representations of the Ottoman Empire, both the state and its people, and Polish-Ottoman relations through the lens of the private library of Władysław Konstanty Wituski, 1603-1655. As an introduction, I would like to say a couple of words about Wituski and his library. He was a rather well-educated Polish nobleman who first studied at the Jesuit College and later at the Kraków Academy. Afterwards, he undertook the typical educational journey through Europe, visiting Denmark, the Dutch Republic, and England. Driven by curiosity and a quest for military excellence, Wituski then made an unexpected decision. He joined the Dutch West India Company and traveled to Brazil. Upon his return to Poland, Wituski served as a courtier and diplomat to King Władysław IV Vasa, held several public offices, and was repeatedly elected to the Sejm, the legislative body of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. On his deathbed, Wituski could not have known that the library he had assembled would soon become part of the war booty brought by the Swedish military leader and statesman Count Carl Gustaf Wrangel to Skokloster Castle in Sweden. It is important to understand that the great historical value of Wituski's book collection lies in the fact that it has been preserved intact since at least 1701, when Skokloster Castle became an entailed estate. Many other book collections of the Polish nobility were passed down through generations and often became scattered or suffered significant losses during wars. The scale of wartime destruction of Polish libraries has been vividly illustrated by the remark of the Polish book historian Arkadiusz Wagner, who has called it the, quote, catastrophic, if not almost apocalyptic, devastation of native historical book collections, end quote. Meanwhile, Wituski's book collection has fossilized at Skokloster Castle. To fully grasp the significance of his collection, we need to remember that our knowledge about early modern noble libraries in Poland is still very limited. This is largely because so few sources have survived, both the books themselves and the inventories that once listed them. This context makes clear the cultural importance of Wituski's collection. His book collection offers insight into the intellectual resources available to a politically active and engaged Polish nobleman who, nevertheless, stood outside the highest echelons of power. At the time Wituski was engaged in political activities, the issue of Polish-Turkish relations was a matter of considerable public interest. The threat posed to the Commonwealth by the Ottoman Empire frequently reoccurred in the discussions at the parliamentary gatherings in which Wituski participated. One of the main topics debated at the same session of 1646 was Władysław IV's secret preparations for a declaration of war on Turkey. Once revealed, they were met with strong opposition from the nobility. Alongside the parliamentary discussions, the printed publications were a crucial source of information on the Ottoman Empire. An early modern private book collection could serve as an easily accessible repository of knowledge to be consulted whenever needed. As I mentioned, in this paper I will examine what kind of information on the Ottoman Empire and Polish-Ottoman relations was available to Wituski in his own library. First of all, Wituski owned three major historical works. The first was the 1645 edition of Historiarum ab origine mundi by Orazio Torsellini, an Italian Jesuit, historian and philologist. The second, a chronicle by Paweł Piasecki, a Polish historian and a secretary to Sigismund III. The third was Paweł Demitrowicz, Compendium of Polish History, based on a chronicle by Marcin Kromer, a 16th-century Polish historian. All these publications offered some background on the Polish-Ottoman relations from a historical perspective, but provided little detail. However, among Wituski's books there was also Samuel Twardowski's epic poem Przeważna legacja. The title translates as The Important Mission, published in Kraków in 1633. Twardowski was a writer of historical epic and a poet. Like Wituski, Twardowski was politically active and participated in Sejmik and Sejm gatherings. Twardowski was also a soldier and fought against the Ottomans and Tatars in the Battle of Chocim 1621. Thereafter, he took part in the diplomatic mission of Prince Krzysztof Zbaraski to the Ottoman Porte, lasting from September 1622 to April 1623. Assigned the role of a secretary, he recorded his observation, which later served as a foundation for Przeważna legacja, an epic poem in evenly rhymed 13-syllable lines known as the Polish Alexandrine. The poem also offered readers from the Commonwealth a vivid picture of an exotic culture. The title, in its full form, reveals that the book contains, quotation, entertaining digressions touching upon the pagan regime, ceremonies, and customs, end quote. Michał Kuran, one of the leading scholars on Twardowski's writings, and who is with us at this conference, has argued in one of his articles that one of the reasons for the book's immense popularity amongst 17th-century readers is the presence of, quote, the description of a journey to the terrifying yet intriguing unknown East, end quote. Kuran has also pointed out that Przeważna legacja was, in fact, quote, one of the most widely read artistic descriptions of the Orient in early modern Poland, end quote. Twardowski's epic poem is rich in descriptions of material and immaterial Turkish culture. And now it's also important to remember that so-called Orientalness, also known as Orientalism, was a distinct feature of the Polish-Lithuanian nobility's culture. Oriental artifacts such as textiles, clothing, weapons, and horse harnesses flowing into the Commonwealth as a result of trade and war contacts shaped the tastes of the nobility. The widespread interest in literary descriptions of the Orient among the nobility was thus partially dependent on their social affiliation. Twardowski's epic poem portrayed what we might today call an intercultural encounter with the other, and it included vivid descriptions of a foreign and culturally distant country. Twardowski's descriptions of Constantinople and its inhabitants were obviously strongly influenced by the author's Catholic stance. According to Roman Krzywy, since the idea of Poland as antemurale Christianitatis, bulwark of Christendom, was so prevailing in the cultural background Twardowski had, his remarks constitute either praise of the Christian past or criticism and mockery of the Muslim presence. Michał Kuran, in his analysis of the attitude towards Islam presented in Przeważna Legacyja, has shown that Twardowski saw it as a false religion created out of a mixture of Judaism, Christian and heretic beliefs, and that Twardowski portrayed the Ottoman Empire as politically weak and unstable. Moreover, Twardowski fiercely criticizes the Turks for their alleged hetero and homosexual promiscuity and drunkenness. Twardowski perceives the Ottomans as inferior also in terms of technical development. For instance, the author claims that the Ottomans believe that clock mechanism run because of black magic and thus use only water clocks. Notwithstanding the disrespectful nature of many of the remarks, Przeważna Legacyja does provide some insight into the religious practices within Islam, such as ritual purification performed outside the mosque and the muezzin's calls coming from atop minarets. As Roman Krzywy has noted, it contains also a few positive comments about Constantinople inhabitants and their culture. According to Twardowski, the city at night is quiet, calm, and safe. Another phenomenon which positively astonishes Twardowski is the fact that the Ottomans do not spit, pick, or blow their noses. Apart from comments on the beliefs and conduct of the Turks, Twardowski's poem contains also descriptions of some of Constantinople's monumental buildings. While discussing the Suleymaniye Mosque, Twardowski provides information on its size and the building materials. What catches his attention is the multitude of light sources and presence of carpets inside the mosque. He finds the edifice aesthetically more impressive than architecture of ancient Memphis or the lighthouse of Alexandria. What surprises in his account is the lack of any further details. Roman Krzywy has suggested that Twardowski was never granted the permission to actually enter the mosque and therefore could only glimpse inside through the door. While describing the adjacent mausoleum of Sultan Suleiman, Twardowski sketches the history of his military achievements. Another building of which Twardowski provides a longer description is the Hagia Sophia Grand Mosque. According to his account, the inside of the dome is filled with, quotation, ancient paintings, end quotation. Twardowski presents their iconographic program and claims that they depict the Annunciation, Nativity of Jesus, Adoration of the Magi, Circumcision of Christ, Christ among the doctors, Flagellation of Christ, Mocking of Jesus, Crucifixion, Entombment, Harrowing of Hell, and Resurrection, as well as John of Damascus, Cyril of Alexandria, John Chrysostom, and Gregory. Marek Preis has argued that these figurative paintings are not only unthinkable in a mosque, but also could never have been placed in a dome of a Byzantine church. The imaginary presence of the scenes from the New Testament and Apocrypha, or portraits of the church fathers, served Wituski's purpose of showing the place as having Christian past. Right after the information about the iconography, Twardowski points his attention towards the tomb of Constantine the Great, one more symbol of Christian past. Twardowski's relation about his exploration of Constantinople offers a catalogue of historical buildings and places. He describes the city walls and the system of fortifications, including Yedikule fortress and the castle of Byzantine emperors. Thereafter, the author mentions some magnificent edifices: the Topkapi Palace, baths, caravanserais, madrasas, and garrisons for the Janissaries. However, the impressive architecture is presented as contrasting with the dark, narrow streets and wooden houses. Twardowski also mentions a zoological garden with tamed lions, leopards, and tigers. Due to the city's location on 7 hills, he compares Constantinople to Rome. He claims that in total there are nearly 3,000 mosques in the city, and in the following verses he lists a hippodrome, an obelisk, and an aqueduct, once again contrasting the presence of the, this time, ancient past. Furthermore, what captures Twardowski's attention in Constantinople are markets, both the ones situated in the city, where Persian, Greek, Armenian, and Moorish merchants offered their goods, and even more impressive ones located in the harbors. While describing the latter, Twardowski's account becomes even more detailed. He lists, among others, Moorish gold, Egyptian rice and other food, Nubian perfume, silk from Damascus, products made of camel or goat wool from Angora, pearls from Aden, silk and gold woven fabrics from Arak, wine from Heraklion, lemons from Corfu, woolen coverings for horses and laces from Caramania, swords and shields, dark blue Venetian textiles, English silver and tin, as well as sable fur brought by Norwegians. During his stay in Constantinople, Twardowski participated also in an excursion to the Black Sea. His account informs the reader what he could see while on board a boat sailing along the Bosphorus. He mentions strategically important places like arsenals, the Maiden's Tower, feather fortifications, and ruins of a bridge. While describing some of the fortresses, the author speaks about Polish prisoners, Korecki and Wiśniowiecki, who were executed there. At the same time, Twardowski is sensitive to the aesthetical values of the surroundings and mentions mountain landscapes, villas and flower gardens filled with tulips and roses and sheep grazing rosemary and lavender. From Twardowski's epic poem, a 17th-century Polish reader could gain a partially stereotypical picture of the Ottoman world. Much of the account is filtered through the lens of Catholic polemics and the idea of Poland as the bulwark of Christendom, which results in hostile depictions of Islam as a false religion, of the Ottomans as morally lax, and of their empire as politically unstable and technically backward. However, at the same time, Twardowski conveyed concrete impressions of Ottoman life. His poem describes religious practices, comments on urban customs, and sketches Constantinople's monumental architecture, from mosques and palaces to fortifications and markets. He also listed exotic goods from across the world, presented the city as the major trading hub, and evoked its landscapes and gardens. Thus, despite its prejudices, the work transmitted to Polish readers some genuine cultural information about the Ottomans. In the end, reading Przeważna Legacja was, for a Polish nobleman like Wituski, a way of traveling without leaving his manor house library. Through Twardowski's words, he could imagine Ottoman religion, architecture, trade, and daily customs, filtered, of course, through the prejudices of his time, yet still offering a vivid glimpse of a distant and fascinating world. Thank you for your attention.